You see, when a woman goes silent, it's easy to assume she's uninterested, that she's moved on, or that you simply never mattered to begin with. But what if I told you that silence, in many cases, isn't a sign of indifference? It's a calculated act of emotional self-preservation. That silence can be loud, it can be intentional, and more than anything, it can be a powerful clue that she craves you, but is afraid of the emotional cost of showing it. Women, by nature and nurture, are deeply attuned to emotional consequences. From a young age, many are taught to prioritize emotional safety over emotional expression. So when a woman finds herself drawn to a man, truly craving his presence, his energy, his touch, what kicks in first is not action, it's assessment. And if she senses that revealing her desire might put her in a position of vulnerability, she won't reach out. She'll withdraw. Not because she doesn't want to connect, but because connection, in her eyes, could mean potential pain. Think about it. A woman who's been hurt before, who's experienced rejection, or who's been told that wanting something too much makes her appear desperate, is not going to make herself that emotionally naked again, unless she feels completely safe to do so. So instead, she plays it cool. She retreats. But internally, she's overanalyzing everything. Your last conversation, your tone, your body language. She wonders if you even notice the tension in her silence. The truth is, she's not indifferent. She's hoping you are perceptive enough to notice that her distance is hiding a deeper emotional current. And here's where it becomes philosophical. Desire is not always expressed through action. Sometimes it's encoded in restraint. Craving doesn't always roar, it whispers. And if you don't have the emotional intelligence to hear it, to feel it, you'll miss it entirely. Her silence is not rejection. It's her hoping you'll be the one brave enough to meet her where words fail. A woman's craving, when unspoken, often looks like hesitation. But that hesitation is her way of protecting the most tender parts of herself. She may be replaying the moments where she felt connected to you, but she's also replaying the possible future where she puts herself out there and gets met with indifference. So she doesn't reach out. She stays quiet, not because she doesn't feel, but because she feels deeply. And this is where most men get it wrong. They take that silence at face value. They mirror it, retreat as well, and the connection dissolves. Not from lack of desire, but from a lack of courage to interpret silence as an invitation, not an ending. So, if you feel that pull, if something in your intuition tells you she's holding back more than just words, don't wait for her to make the move. Be the one who steps in with clarity, confidence, and presence, because sometimes the strongest craving isn't loud. It's the quiet that stays with you long after she's gone. Let that silence move you into action, not assumption. There's a certain irony when a woman craves you, yet chooses to maintain distance. And the irony deepens when that distance isn't just physical, it's digital. She follows you online. She checks your stories. She might even accidentally like something from months ago. But she never texts, never calls, never initiates. Because watching you from afar feels safer than engaging directly. In today's world, where so much of our interaction is mediated through screens, it's easier than ever to keep tabs on someone without ever revealing how you feel. And women, who are emotionally intuitive by nature, know how to use this to protect themselves. When she craves you but doesn't reach out, it's not because she's cold or indifferent. It's because reaching out means stepping into vulnerability, and vulnerability, when not matched with security, feels like danger. She might be testing the waters, observing whether you're still the same, watching to see how you respond to others. She's looking for cues, signals, patterns. She's asking silent questions. Does he miss me? Is he moved on? Was I just a moment to him or something more? But you won't voice these questions, because voicing them hands you power, and if she's unsure of where she stands with you, that power feels too risky to give away. This behavior is often misread as games, but it's not always a game. It's a defense mechanism. When a woman has been emotionally invested before and didn't feel seen, the craving doesn't die, it just hides. And it often hides behind indirect behavior. Watching from a distance becomes her way of staying close without getting hurt. And here's where most men misinterpret the situation. They think if she's not reaching out, she must not care. But emotional interest doesn't always come in the form of messages or calls. Sometimes it comes in silence and digital shadows. In psychology, this is known as passive engagement. It's her way of saying, I'm still here, I still care, but I don't know how safe it is to show that to you. So what should you do? Pay attention to the consistency of her quiet presence. If she's consistently observing, interacting subtly, or reappearing in ways that aren't direct but feel intentional, there's a deeper layer to explore. But don't chase blindly. Instead, approach with emotional clarity. Extend a message that shows presence, not pressure. Make space for her to feel emotionally safe again, because craving without contact is rarely about lack of desire. It's about emotional uncertainty. Let's not forget, real connections aren't built solely on bold declarations. They're built in the quiet understanding between two people who choose to see each other clearly, even when one is hiding behind silence. So if you sense her presence in your digital world but feel her absence in your inbox, understand this. Her silence may not be rejection. It may be the loudest form of longing. Don't ignore it. Respond to it with awareness, with intention, and with a heart ready to understand. There's something deeply telling about the way a woman acts when you enter a room, or even when your name is mentioned. If you pay close attention, you'll notice it. That subtle tension in her body, the way her voice shifts ever so slightly, or how she suddenly becomes more alert, more self-conscious. And yet, despite all this, she still doesn't reach out. She doesn't call, she doesn't text, she keeps her distance. It's confusing, right? But this contradiction, this simultaneous attraction and withdrawal, is one of the most overlooked signs that a woman craves you but refuses to show it outright. At the core of this behavior is emotional restraint, not because she doesn't feel, but because she feels too much. When a woman is emotionally stirred by your presence, it's not always joyful or comforting. It can be overwhelming. And when those emotions are coupled with past disappointments, rejections, or fear of being seen as too forward, what you get is an internal tug of war. She wants to connect, but she's afraid of what that connection might cost her. So what does she do? She becomes guarded. Not cold, not indifferent, just composed, carefully calculated. She might smile politely, keep the conversation short, or even avoid eye contact. Yet her energy betrays her. The emotional atmosphere shifts the moment you're near, even when her words remain neutral. Psychologically, this is a defense mechanism. In fact, many women are conditioned to believe that wanting a man too openly makes them vulnerable or less desirable. So instead of expressing longing directly, they suppress it and replace it with restraint. It's not dishonesty. It's self-preservation. But here's where it gets interesting. That restraint, that composure, it only surfaces around you, not because she doesn't want to engage, but because your presence stirs something in her she can't easily control. She may even create emotional distance just to manage her own feelings. She may pretend you don't matter to her, not to be cruel, but because you actually matter too much. If you're intuitive, you'll recognize this restraint for what it is: emotional friction. You're disrupting her inner world in a way she didn't anticipate, and instead of leaning in, she's holding back. Not because she lacks desire, but because that desire scares her more than rejection ever could. What you must do is meet her with patience, not pressure. Let her see that your presence isn't something to fear, but something she can trust. Emotional restraint is not a closed door. It's a door waiting to be knocked on gently, not kicked open with force. So if a woman seems unusually composed around you, more than she is with anyone else, don't dismiss it as disinterest. It could be one of the most profound signs of her internal longing. And remember this: the strongest feelings often wear the quietest masks. The question is, will you be wise enough to see beyond the silence? There's a curious thing that happens when someone is attracted to you but doesn't feel safe enough emotionally or socially to show it. They start engaging in what psychologists call indirect proximity. In plain terms, this means being around you without actually being with you. It's not just physical, it's energetic. A woman who secretly craves you might not initiate a conversation, might not send that text, but somehow she always finds herself in your space, at the same event, in the same room, near your social circles, present but elusive. This isn't a coincidence. It's a calculated dance between desire and fear. Her presence in your world, subtle as it may be, is her way of staying connected without crossing the line that vulnerability demands. She might engage with your friends, laugh a little too loudly at your jokes when others are listening, or comment on your social media without ever reaching out directly. It's her way of saying, I see you, I feel something for you, but I'm not ready to show it plainly. Why? Because for many women, especially those who have been emotionally wounded in the past, desire is a double-edged sword. Acting on it means opening the door to uncertainty, to rejection, or worse, being misunderstood. So instead of direct contact, they opt for symbolic gestures. They linger on the edge of your orbit where it's emotionally safer. But here's what's even more revealing. The way she mirrors your movements or subtly aligns her schedule or locations with yours. If you're paying attention, you'll notice this unspoken synchronization. It's not by accident. It's emotional signaling at its most cautious. And yet, because it lacks confrontation, it often goes unnoticed. Or worse, dismissed. Now, this isn't about obsession or manipulation. It's about emotional pacing. Some women crave deeply, but move slowly. The proximity is their compromise between want and restraint. She wants to feel your presence, observe you, understand your emotional temperature, all while protecting her own. She's studying you in a sense without ever making it known, because in her world, keeping her cards close to her chest feels safer than laying them on the table. So what does this mean for you? It means you have to develop what I call emotional fluency, the ability to read what isn't said, to sense intention beneath silence, and to honor proximity as more than physical space. It's a form of intimacy that precedes touch. And when you see it for what it is, you stop chasing validation and start recognizing resonance. A woman's silent nearness can speak volumes, if you're listening with more than your ears. And the real question is, when you feel her presence before you hear her words, will you lean in with curiosity or walk away in confusion? Because sometimes it's the woman who doesn't call, doesn't text, and doesn't confess, who's actually the one who's feeling the most. When a woman secretly desires you but holds herself back from making contact, one of the most telling signs often hides in her body language, more specifically in the inconsistencies of it. This is where the unspoken becomes louder than any words. Her gestures, glances, posture, and presence all form a kind of emotional code, revealing more than she's consciously willing to admit. You see, our bodies tend to betray our minds when emotions are involved. A woman might appear calm and composed on the surface, but subtle cues, like nervous fidgeting, avoiding eye contact when you're close, then stealing glances when you're not looking, are windows into what she's truly feeling. The contradictions in her nonverbal cues are not accidents. They're signals of inner conflict. She desires connection, but fears exposure. Now let's think deeper. Why would someone show signs of interest through body language but never follow up with action? It comes down to vulnerability. To make the first move means taking a risk of being misunderstood, of being too forward, of losing dignity. For many women, particularly those conditioned to be pursued rather than to pursue, this risk is daunting. So instead, her body speaks in riddles. She may lean in when you talk, subconsciously mirroring your gestures, but then suddenly pull away, as if catching herself. She might brush past you more than once in a crowded room, only to pretend she didn't see you. These aren't just coincidences. These are hesitations wrapped in longing. What's powerful here is that once you become aware of this language, you stop depending on spoken words for confirmation. You start to recognize that desire often lives in the tension between action and restraint. A woman who craves you but avoids contact is navigating an internal dilemma. Her body wants what her mind isn't ready to express. But this isn't about manipulation or playing games. It's about internal conflict. She might not even fully understand why she's drawn to you or why she can't initiate a conversation. All she knows is that being around you stirs something within her, and so her body leaks truth while her voice stays silent. And you, if you're tuned in, can learn to see the difference between polite interaction and veiled attraction. You can notice when her laughter is a little too eager, when her posture opens slightly in your presence, when her eyes linger a second too long. These are not accidents. These are quiet confessions. So here's the takeaway. If you want to understand a woman's hidden desires, don't just listen to what she says. Watch how she says nothing. Her silence, her stillness, even her stumbles, they're all part of the story she's not ready to tell out loud. Because sometimes the loudest signals come from the subtlest movements. And if you learn how to read them, you'll never be left wondering how she really feels. When a woman secretly craves you but never reaches out, one of the most overlooked yet revealing signs is her emotional responsiveness to your presence or absence, especially when it's unexpected. This isn't about the moments when you're both in the same room and conversation flows naturally. No, this is about how she reacts when she sees you unexpectedly, hears your name in passing, or notices your digital footprint online. Her reactions in those spontaneous, unguarded moments often speak volumes. Here's the truth. Emotion leaves fingerprints. A woman who's emotionally neutral won't flinch at your name. She won't pause when you show up where she didn't expect you. But a woman who secretly desires you and is suppressing that desire will have a visceral response. Maybe it's a subtle shift in her expression. Maybe her energy changes. She becomes either unusually quiet or suddenly animated. Maybe she leaves the room faster than usual, not because she doesn't want to be around you, but because being around you feels too vulnerable. These are not random behaviors. These are emotional reflexes. Psychologically, this stems from what we call emotional imprinting. When someone leaves a strong impression on you, whether positive or filled with unresolved tension, your body and mind register that presence. You become sensitive to their cues. So if a woman's mood noticeably shifts at the mere mention of your name, or she lights up when you enter the space but tries to play it cool, that's emotional residue. That's the desire she's suppressing, trying to surface in spite of her efforts. The reason she doesn't reach out despite feeling all this, it comes back to internal conflict. Maybe she's afraid of rejection. Maybe she's worried about ruining the dynamic you already have. Or perhaps she's built a narrative around you that keeps her safe from acting on her feelings, telling herself you're not interested or that it would never work, even if the opposite might be true. So what she does instead is react from the shadows, hoping you'll notice what she's too scared to articulate. In situations like this, it's easy to overlook those reactions. Most people are focused on direct communication, text messages, calls, social media engagement. But those aren't always the real indicators of desire. Sometimes what a woman doesn't say, what she feels but never articulates, is more honest than any message she could send. Her tension, her glances, her shifting demeanor in your presence, these are whispers from her emotional core. So what should you do? You don't chase, you observe. You respond not by confronting or pressing, but by being emotionally present, consistent, and grounded. If she senses you're emotionally mature enough to receive her without judgment or ego, you'll start to notice her defenses soften. Because the truth is, when a woman craves you but hides it, she's watching closely, waiting to see if you're the kind of man who sees beyond words. And if you are, you won't need her to say it. You'll already know. And in that knowing, you'll carry the quiet confidence that moves mountains.